All right, let's jump into the games from the tournament. I actually don't have most of the games from it, but the ones I do have are really exciting. And even this game, I don't have the start of it, I don't have the end of it, but I have the middle of it. And there's a ton of awesome tactics in this middle game. So this is between Jeff, who had the white pieces, and Seve, who had the black pieces. And this was actually not even, I don't think, an official game in the tournament, but a very fun game that the two of them played late at night. So let's jump into it. So first off, Jeff starts by playing C3, which seems to make some sense to me. The crazy tactic here that the engine is suggesting is actually queen takes. Let me go back here. Queen takes f3. Okay, if you don't take, I've just got a pawn. But if you do take, then I come in here with a check. And let's just say you move the rook up or the king up, play rook to e1, and then keep my rooks defended. And then also, this seems dangerous, getting my rooks up in here. So anyways, that didn't happen yet. Jeff played c3, pawn moves forward. Bishop goes over, which makes sense, obviously, because you can't take this bishop because you're going to lose the queen. And lastly, we have finally that move h5. And then this is the moment where Jeff realizes the tactic is available to him. Then he takes on f3, bishop takes back, then check. And here's where Seve made a crucial mistake. It isn't winning the game if he makes the right move. He's just not losing as bad. Here's the problem. This bishop is attacking both of his pieces, which is good if you're Seve. But obviously, you've got to do something about this check right now. And so the problem is when Seve plays b6, this bishop is still attacking both pieces, but it's white's turn. So Jeff's going to pick up the bishop and be up a piece for nothing, basically. And so what Seve needs to do is play this move d6, attacking the rook and attacking the rook over here. So the best you can really do is move your rook over, for instance. This is the only winning move. And then if you want to, you can either evacuate the bishop or just takes here. And at the end of the day, white is still up material here, but white is not completely winning the game. It's black's turn. If you want to do g takes f4, maybe start pushing away. There's just not an obvious plan for black to be, steamrolled here. White will have to do a lot to still win the game. But unfortunately, I think Seve saw the danger of moving over to d6, and so he chose b6. And then here, Jeff was able to pick up a full piece. Now, funnily enough, Seve gets the piece right back because Jeff makes an accidental mistake here. I also don't know why. I guess you don't want to lose this pawn chain. I was looking when I was watching this game that maybe they should just take, but rook h2 is the best move because it defends this pawn, which is more important than the double g pawn. And obviously the double g pawn is still defended right now, so life goes on. And then we get an interesting point right about here where it was not clear, black's getting all of white's pawns, but that pawn is really hard to stop, and this rook is amazingly placed to stop any check shenanigans and just march this pawn down the forward. And so after finally realizing that, Seve sacks the pawn for the rook, but unfortunately, there's actually just no way to still win. He was just a little bit too early. What he needs to do here, basically, is just continue marching his pawns. So let's just say you get to this point, keep marching, you get to this point, try to move up, but at this point, if you're not careful, this is actually drawn based on the fact that basically there's just no way to win all these pawns. But essentially, that doesn't happen. Seve takes a little bit too early, and he loses his chance to draw the game. And so at this point, Seve continues on, but he's just not advanced enough to stop it. This is just showing how the game may have continued. The game did continue for a while, but reached this point, yeah. We lost the rest of it. I think this game went on, and then Seve and Jeff had like a queen versus a rook endgame. It was crazy, and that game was too hard to be won. But let's move on to this one and go to the next one. All right, this is a game between, again, Jeff playing the white pieces and Blair playing the black pieces, and this game is the winner of the Cheezer Award. The Cheezer Award is given to the player who, when they were losing the most, they came back. That eval bar swung all the way to the opposite side of the board, and they eked out a victory. So let's jump into it. All right, so Jeff opens up with e4, and we get some mainline moves here for just a little bit. And then, okay, right about here, reach some interesting moments where the game is pretty much equal. Maybe this knight's well placed, maybe it's not. Maybe black's just going to develop pieces like normal and then trade off that advanced knight, and the game is pretty much equal. But maybe is this bishop, really doing that well in front of this pawn? It's hard to say. And so, yeah, it makes sense here. Engine wants to take basically here, and then this position, this just seems pretty good. You can start marching these pawns, and then you're never really worried about losing your knight. You can't really get it trapped. Obviously, you can move out of the way here if you need to, and there's no way to stop that, because if you go this way, well, obviously, you can't take that. You can't take that. That's awesome. And if you go here, you get forked. So anyways, life goes on. And here it seems like everything's pretty much equal. Both sides are kind of equalish in development. They've only really got the one piece out, and the queen's out, but it's not really doing anything. But this is an unfortunate blunder because you just take, and white's up a pawn. And that's kind of a nice pawn to be up because this pawn's here. While it might be nice for black from an attack purpose, let's just imagine you had your rooks on these 2 rows and you're just attacking the king, which, spoiler alert, is pretty much what happened. It kind of just sucks to be down a pawn. So, get to this point, Jeff tries to trade off a few more pieces, moves the queen over, and I'm not sure what necessarily the point was here. Maybe keep this pawn defended. Maybe you want to go over here and start harassing some stuff, or maybe you want to bring the bishop out and try to line up on this pawn. But here, Blair really started getting tricky, and I know from talking to him that he was almost thinking this was going to happen, and he got really excited about it. Jeff moves his rook over to e1, and then Blair sets a silly little trap here. It's not even a trap, actually. If Jeff does the normal moves, there's nothing that gets won here, but it is kind of annoying. Blair plays rook to h6. Now, if you do nothing, we've got a really big threat here on the g-file. Now, obviously, you could just play this move, and then if black takes here, maybe pieces are not ideally developed. These rooks are not really easily accessible to any good files. But you can just start flinging pawns down the queen side. Maybe you win, maybe you lose, but you're not going to get checkmated immediately. But I think the very fact that this bishop here kind of demands an answer to a question, which is what are you going to do about it? And so Jeff snaps that h6 bishop in the game, and there's only one problem. This eval bar goes from a little bit plus in Jeff's favor to all the way down into the black, because black has this great move. Queen takes g2, checkmate. And with that, Blair won the Cheezer award because that eval bar swung harder than in any other game in the tournament. So let's move on to the next one. All right, so this is the game that I played against Seve. I had the white pieces, Seve with the black, and this game was just nonsense from the very beginning. In all my games, I tried to play something a little different than what I normally did, so I played e4, or I played c4. I tried to never play d4, which is what I've played the most, and so we get a crazy position, and I feel like Seve must also not play against a lot of c4 players. So this was a crazy game with a player who doesn't play against the English system all the time, and a player who doesn't play the English system all the time. So, here, unfortunately, from the very get-go, Seve makes an unfortunate mistake. And I think this line where you bring the bishop out really early is also, I think, different from what Seve plays, because he usually goes for, I think, some kind of Maroczy bind setup where you have the pawns on c4 and e4. So it's super easy to miss this bishop running ops in the corner. So when Seve moves his bishop forward to d7, that b7 pawn falls, and there's simply no way to save the rook. Now you move your bishop up to c6 like Seve did, although actually apparently this is just as good because the queen takes, but this makes a lot of sense to me. Getting your bishop back there in the corner. The problem is I'm up a piece. Well, I'm up an exchange and a pawn, which is pretty unfortunate. So have to play that move or some other move. I don't know what it wants me to play. Yeah, I mean, knight f3. It says knight f3 is good, but it's f3 is the best, apparently. But you wouldn't find me saying that. So now this move was a little bit silly. I was kind of inviting Seve to play this move. And my idea basically is if knight goes here, I move the queen back, and then on the next move, I'll just push it away. So I don't know, let's just say you move your bishop out, I'll just do this, and then you have to move your knight back to one of these squares. This one probably makes the most sense. But at this point I thought, okay, now I'm really cooking with gas, and I'm going to start marching these pawns down. And so I kind of played that move to invite Seve to do it. So he moves the bishop first, and then he moves the knight to this square, and so I trade everything off. And here I got probably a little too fancy than I needed to. Probably didn't need to do all this. It's a little bit nonsensical. I could play knight b5 to go after the pawn. Engine ironically does say queen a4 check is the best. And basically, if you play this move, I'll take, and maybe you take with the king for activity, maybe you take with the knight. But either way, my idea was basically, all right, well, I'm going to go over here, and now both of these pawns are under attack. You can't save them both. And there's no craziness where if you save this pawn and go here, you're not going to win anything. And also, this piece is defended, so I can just safely retreat. And these pawns will just march down the board. So I wasn't super worried. And now here I got a little too fancy, admittedly, and I played this move, knight to d4. And basically, if you take, then I just escape. But there's no other moves you can really do. You can move your queen if you want to defend this way. But I wasn't super worried. So probably a fancier trade than needed to. And this was a fun move because there's only one way to stop it. Well, first, if you play this move, I'll pick up here. And then again, the rook's still under attack. And you have to be super careful. But you can also play this move and then just lose the exchange. And now this is a crazy sequence. Obviously, you can't get greedy, otherwise you're going to get checkmated. But also, you have to do something because you're going to get checkmated regardless. But if you, let's just say, move back here, there's this move apparently, which double attacks. But even if you don't like that, that's actually, I don't know what I would have done. What even is an option? I have no idea what I was going to do here. I honestly don't remember. I don't remember what I was supposed to do here. Engine says, don't even worry about it and just do this and you'll be fine. And that probably would have worked out. Maybe I was ready to sacrifice the queen. I honestly don't exactly remember. But either way, that's one of the great things about this move, bishop or queen h3, is that it just asks a lot of questions. And so that was a great move too. I love this. And that's a blunder. But either way, obviously you have to deal with the threats here. But you also don't want to lose the bishop. And so here's basically a position where I'm up a couple pawns, I'm up in exchange, but this game took way longer than it needed to. And frankly, there was a couple moments where I was feeling like I was losing the momentum. And then Seve has an amazing tactic, which we never would have seen because it's just simply too difficult. And if Seve had won this game, this would have been the Cheezer award. So right now, the engine says I'm plus 10. And so you look at all the natural moves where you say, well, this might be a natural move to keep everything defended and then pick up the pawn later, or maybe you want to do some shenanigans and you want to go over here and attack the bishop and then you bring the rook over and checkmate. So I'm plus 10. But with this one move, king takes h3. Now black is plus 10 from a crazy standpoint that it's almost impossible to see this in a game because when you're on the back foot, when you're in defense mode, you never see these crazy attacking moves. So it starts with Seve finds the right move. He just doesn't find the really difficult to find waiting move. Only one legal move, king g4, and then you have to find the crazy move, bishop to g8, which just feels insane to make a waiting move in a situation like this. But the problem is, explain to me how you're going to stop the queen going right here. There's actually only like one way to get out of it that's not checkmate, is you have to play the rook here specifically. If you move it right here, you're still going to end up in a bad position. Again, only one legal move here, and then this is just not pretty. There's nowhere to really go. And then you lose the queen. So that's a terrible way to go. But the problem is if you, here we go, right here, if you don't do that, you're still going to lose the queen either way. Basically, just the same tactical sequence occurs, and there's just no way to stop the melee. Actually, you can take here, and that's better. Oh, right, because this is checkmate, because you're just supposed to run away in this situation and just lose the queen earlier. So, anyways, unfortunately for the spectators, Seve did not find the immediate follow-up move, and now the threat is largely gone. Game progresses on. I'm up 6 points of material here, but I really got a little lopsided in going after some of these pawns, and it came to a point where it just felt like I was losing momentum. Seve was just starting to pick up material here, and it didn't feel obvious, but obviously he's only got the one pawn, and so once I reached this point, I said, all right, okay, I can relax a little bit. And then I got a nice little tactic here, which is pawn to c5 check, getting the old fossil on the king, and then I obviously pick up the bishop, and the game ends right here. So that was a crazy game. It would have been legendary if Seve found that tactic of queen h1 check and then just subtly moving the bishop back from d7 to e8, but lo and behold, it didn't happen. And so at this point in the game, something crazy happened in the tournament in that since I beat Seve, I now had 4 points. And since earlier in the tournament, Calvin had beaten me, I think if I remember correctly, he had 4 points. So Seve's sitting at 3 points. Basically Seve has to win. He can't draw in order to make it to just the tie for first place. And so going into Calvin's game, we had some absolutely crazy stakes that we were all kind of, I think, rooting for Seve to make the tournament interesting, to tie it all up. And so let's jump in and take a look at that game. All right, so we have the title fight here between Seve, who has the black pieces, and Calvin, who has the white pieces. And this was a crazy game filled with expectation because it was truly high stakes. Seve had to win in order to tie for first place. A draw just wouldn't cut it. And obviously, last tournament we had that crazy final game between Seve and Calvin was, frankly, outrageous. And this game was no less outrageous. So let's jump right into it. Calvin goes for d4 and goes for this fianchettoed bishop on g2. And here, Calvin unfortunately makes an opening error, but you can try to claim that it's not so bad. Seve spots it, which is knight takes d4. The pawn was defended when the queen was guarding it, but after you move the knight to d2, the pawn drops. Push the pawn up, and then you can say, well, this is pretty good. I've got my pieces off their starting squares. All of my minor pieces are developed. I'm ready to castle, and black has nothing. The problem is it's not that simple. In addition to the extra pawn, which is a center pawn, I might add, the problem is these knights are honestly actually not that well placed. just because their reach on the board is a lot less, and you'd be much happier to have them in these squares and even in this square, because right now the bishop's not doing anything just yet. It's in a great position to cause kind of long-term pressure, but right now you want your knights ideally a little bit further so they can start reaching into the board a lot quicker, but it's not that simple. And so Calvin again spots an important threat here. You have to do something about that pawn, and so the recommended moves are here, here, or here. There's really just no other options, and so you're not going to castle, queenside in this variation of the game, so there's no pressure to not move the rook. And then, if anything, you can potentially even start pushing p down the queenside. So he moves the knight, centralizes over, and finally castles. Now here I would say I'd almost take white because, again, white's got all his pieces out. It's castled. He's ready to go. This bishop's not exactly optimal, and this bishop can get in the game pretty quickly, but it's not really biting on any targets because basically all of white's kingside pawns are on dark squares, and so this isn't so bad, but the engine still prefers black. So here's kind of a fun clearing sacrifice here. Taking is apparently a mistake, and basically for the idea that once e takes d4, you don't have this problem bishop anymore. It can enter the game. This bishop's perfectly placed, and so you've got these bishops running ops, and so this seems, these are terrible lines I just drew. This seems pretty decent. It's not what happened. I took the other way, and then, okay, and we get some trickiness right here. Obviously you can't do this because after this exchange, you're gonna pick up a piece, and so even though black actually has 2 pawns for the piece, you're still down a piece. And alternatively, you can't take here because I can just take here if I want to, although actually that doesn't work because then this is defended. The cool move here is you play knight to e4, double attacking these pieces. Only a couple moves defend the piece, but either way you move, you just snatch, let's say you go right here, you just snatch the bishop. And again, you're up a piece, and again, black has 2 pawns for the piece. It's just not enough. So anyways, Seve spots it. This is a really crazy part of the game where Seve almost won super early because the pressure that is starting to mount on this pawn is pretty crazy. And so one of the moves you can try is here, which doesn't really make... Oh, no, not knight f3, knight f4. The problem is you have to do something, and so Calvin opts for the slightly less better move, which is rook to f1. But then you have some additional problems here. After knight d3, it's not exactly obvious what you're supposed to do. Again, I don't know. What does the engine say? It says this, but I don't know about that. Knight b3. I guess knight b3 makes sense. And you just move away, and then you run away, and again. Well, that doesn't work, obviously, because of the pin. But either way, this was some craziness. Seve goes this way, which also makes a lot of sense to me, because then you don't run into quite as many issues, I feel like. And if you're not careful, there's some shenanigans here, but... Now here, there's a really important move that Seve missed that would have won him the game on the spot. There's actually a couple moves that accomplish it. The problem is this queen is running ops on the king, X rank through the knight, and so any of these moves, whether you play g5 or whether you play e5, they pin the knight and you're going to pick up that piece. But Seve doesn't quite see it. He goes a different route. And then here, unfortunately, Seve makes a huge blunder. The problem is you're double attacking this piece, so you need to decide whether you want to try to defend it or whether you're just going to pull the queen away and let him, take the pawn, but you're going to use that tempo for something else. The problem with this move, even though it makes sense, and again, there's actually still a way out of this, is that you pick up this pawn, and now black only has 1 pawn. White still has that extra piece that he's taken from black, and so you have to hit him with the move bishop to e2 check. And then you can take whichever way you want, take with the queen, and then the queen retreats. And the benefit of this is that black is still technically a material because he has so many pawns. But the problem is if you don't spot that move and you move the queen first, you're going to lose that bishop. And so there's no pretty way out of it. Game continues on, and it's getting kind of scary if you're white, though, because these 2 rooks are pretty powerful. It's a weird situation where you've got 2 rooks and a queen versus 3 minor pieces, a rook and a queen. So it's definitely material up for white, but it's such an odd, unique game. You don't get this kind of material situation super often. Really, all his pieces are running tight ropes here. That was unfortunately just a blunder, but the game still goes on. Here, unfortunately, right about, where is is it? Right about here. Calvin made a huge blunder, which is really funny to me. It was funny to all of us. Is it makes so much sense. You play knight e4, and then your knights are defending each other. But the problem is, Seve can just take on e4 because you can't move the knight because it's a pin, and you can't even play a move like king f3 to try to attack the piece. Or there's no in between move where you get to make another threat. And so now it's just 2 rooks versus a knight and a rook, which is pretty unfortunate. And so basically, Calvin starts throwing in a lot of the checks, but the problem is the king just eventually needs to walk forward, and it's all over. And here it's truly over, because after check, and then you move the rook back up, there's no way to stop the inevitable. And so here it was that Seve finally defeated Calvin in a very, very long game, almost 60 moves, tons of opportunities for both of them to win, but man, was it a fun game to watch, and makes me excited for the rematch next year. So hope you guys enjoyed the video. See you next time.